to the first Visual Inductive Priors for Data Efficient Deep Learning workshop. We're very glad to have your attendance. We hope to have a good time today. We chose to organize the workshop to collect and boost works into Visual Inductive Priors. So what do we mean by Visual Inductive Priors? We're basically talking about ways of restricting the set of functions that a neural network could learn that are grounded in prior knowledge. And some examples of this kind of prior knowledge could be invariance to color shifts, equivariance over image transformations, constraints inspired by biological vision models, and many other lines of research. So why do we want to highlight this work? Because we believe that data efficiency is becoming more and more important for today's deep learning, and we think this is a good way to achieve it. So when I say these are the people that I'm talking about. We're very glad to be hosting the workshop for you. If you have any questions or remarks, you can find our contact information on the website, and we'll be very glad to talk to you. So we were also glad to be met with a lot of enthusiasm from the community. We organized 3 tracks for people to interact. Mainly the paper track, we got 22 submissions. 5 works were accepted to be longer form oral presentations today, and 7 were accepted to be somewhat shorter poster presentations. Of course, there's no physical poster, so it will just be another talk in this case. We organized 4 challenges for data efficient deep learning. We'll give an intro to those later today. But we're very glad to have 34 different participants across the 4 tasks. So we're very happy with that. And we also invited basically external works, works that were not published at our workshop, but maybe published at this year's ECCV or another recent conference that is relevant to our topic. So we'll also have a couple of presentations from that. So today's session will roughly look like this. We will start off with a keynote panel discussion. We hope you've all watched the keynote talks that were hosted on the ECCV conference platform. Jan will host a panel discussion. There will be opportunity also to ask questions of the keynote speakers. We'll have a short break, and after the break we will do all the presentations, so the oral presentations, along with the Q&A. We will introduce the challenges, hand out the awards, and give the winners of the presentations an opportunity to present their work. Right after that we will have the poster presentations, which are also, all of this is pre-recorded presentations, and these are a bit shorter. Along with the Q&A that is both for the posters and the challenges. At the end, we will have these 3 external poster presentations. And we might have some time at the end left to also do a little bit of Q&A for those posters after we close the session. The session will not be closed. The Zoom webinar will not be shut down after 10, so people can hang around a bit if they want and maybe discuss a bit more informally. So as for Q&A, we will have opportunity to ask questions of the presenters at several times. We invite the audience to use the Q&A feature. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, there should be a button Q&A, and you can ask a question there. And one of the organizers will organize these, will collect these questions and put them in a place where the host of the session can find them and read them out. And then the presenters will have these panelists' rights, will be able to use their video and audio to respond to the questions. If you do ask a question, please include the number of the paper, because we will have blocks after the break, we will have these blocks of presentations where we do a number of talks in order. So please include the number of the paper that your question is about. All right, that's it for me. We will do the keynote panel discussion, and I'll hand the floor to Jan.
Yes, thank you very much. Also, thank you very much to all the 3 keynotes where Nan Yang is filling in for Daniel Kemes. So I was very happy with the keynote talks. They aligned very well with the workshop. Maybe I'll first ask the audience if they have any questions. So then you can think about, you put your questions in the Q&A. Anything that you would like to ask of the keynotes after you've seen their video or in general. Maybe that's something to start with. And in the meantime, maybe I can ask some questions myself. So I really liked it that Professor Charles Leek he gives a very biological perspective, and then Professor Matthias Betke goes more to the computational neural side, more to the deep learning side, and Daniel Kramer's does really shape with neural networks included. So maybe, let's see, shall I start with maybe the talk of Charles Leek? So let me start with a small detailed question. So in your very nice experiment where you talk about the global and the local part composition, where you have either the local, so you have the global configuration the same, and you change the local parts, or you change the local parts and keep the local configuration the same, or you keep both the same, or you change both. So I was wondering, so there you show these EEG responses. So I was wondering exactly what the task is here that you let the humans do.
So we've done a whole range of different kinds of tasks using stimuli with that kind of structure. In some of the tasks, the observers memorize a subset of the stimuli. It's a large stimulus set. There's about 260 odd different configurations of these 3D objects. And in some of the tasks, the subjects hate doing this, but we have them memorize a subset of the stimuli. We give them arbitrary labels, and it takes the subjects maybe 5 to 10 sessions to memorize the stimuli. Sometimes we use matching tasks as well. So we may present a sequence of 2 images and ask the participants to quickly indicate whether or not the images were the same. And we would also vary the viewpoint as well, so the 3D rotation of the object. And the observers can do the matching task very easily, actually. They achieve very high levels of accuracy. Mm-hmm. But what we're primarily interested in is the reaction time cost. Behaviorally, we're interested in the reaction time cost. Or I think in the data I showed you, what tends to happen is that even where we rotated the 3D viewpoint, so that the 2D projection is very different, it takes participants longer to reject mismatching stimuli, to say that the 2 objects don't match when they share the 3D configuration of the parts. And so we consistently find that we get this time cost that appears to suggest that quite rapidly the observers the visual system is extracting and computing some kind of mental representation of the geometric structure of the object.
And by this you mean more a global representation?
Yeah, and it's not in 2D space. It seems to be in 3D space because we're varying the viewpoint of the objects in order to have this similar. It's basically in a sense you could consider the EEG data, the evoked potential, as a measure of similarity. We find that there's this time cost and this signature in the ERP, which appears to suggest that the participants are extracting this quite abstract, presumably, representation of the geometric global spatial configuration of these parts. I think some of the most compelling evidence for this idea that the human visual system is computing representations of object geometry at these different scales, these local and global scales, comes from the neuropsychological literature. Because, and I think I showed you some data in the talk, showing that under some conditions of brain damage, these systems can dissociate, so that we find patients who who seemingly are able to render the global structure of stimuli that they're asked to copy, but not the local elements, and vice versa. So other patients will reproduce the local structure, but not the global structure.
Yeah.
And in other words, you get this double dissociation. You can impair one system and leave the other intact, and vice versa, which in neuropsychology would generally be interpreted to mean that you have two systems with different neural correlates, and these can be independently damaged. So I think one of the arguments I was trying to make in the talk is that those kinds of data suggest that the biological system has evolved a solution to this inverse problem. How do you recover 3D shape from a 2D retinal projection in a sophisticated way with a complex functional architecture? It's, you know, this functional architecture, which is seemingly universal across human observers. You know, we collect data from lots of human participants. We aggregate this data. We find this consistency. So it must be the case, I would have to argue, as a biological vision researcher, that we have all evolved as part of our genotype, a similarly structured, functionally structured biological system for image classification, for the recovery of 3D object shape. Otherwise, if we all had a different system, our brains were all just kind of this tabula rasa, this blank tablet at birth. We all developed our own kind of solution miraculously within a few weeks of birth, or a few months maybe. Of course, the data we would get would be a complete mess. We would be averaging across different computational solutions. We wouldn't ever expect to get the same results and consistency across observers, but we do. So it must be, I would say, must be the case that the human brain has evolved the same computational solution to the inverse problem, and this is passed on as part of a genotype, and it involves this complex functional architecture. I mean, I only had the time in the talk to focus on this issue of spatial scale, the local global thing. I could have also talked about recurrent processing. I mean, we know there's a lot of top-down interactive processing in the human visual system. We know this from behavioral work, we know this from neurophysiological work, from MRI, etc.
And these are both things that deep neural networks now don't do very well. So indeed, there's typically CNNs are feed-forward. And in your talk, you talked about this work by Baker, where deep CNNs don't classify based on shape.
Yeah.
And this is very nice because this matches very well with the talk of Matthias Bethke, who did a very similar experiment where he shows that CNNs are very sensitive to texture. So there he takes the texture of one image and the shape of the other image and superimposes them on each other. And then humans tend to classify based on the shape, and the DNNs all tend to classify based on the texture. And then, as a possible solution that is given is that, so please, Matthias, please correct me if I'm wrong, but so you apply style transfer to many training images, and then you train your network with these superimposed styles. And then my question to Matthias would be, so this is kind of a form of data augmentation. So then the knowledge comes in the training data. So it's not like a convolution where you really restrict the architecture to be position invariant. So do you think do you think data augmentation is or is that the way to go, do you think?
No. Thanks for the nice question. Data augmentation is somehow always the simplest thing that you can do, right? So if you want to achieve some invariance, then you can randomize a feature that you want to get invariant to, And so that was a low-hanging fruit to try out, basically. I think more fundamentally, we would like to have not only shift equivariance, but also some scale equivariance and a better notion of how objects are composed out of parts. And I think that's it's also very much related to this difference between texture and shape in these models, because obviously it is also a question of scale, what is considered to be a shape property. So at the very small scale, these textures consist of like similar shapes that are arranged in a stationary fashion across the image. And then at the large scale, when you reach the boundaries of the image, then you have no space to fill the image in a stationary fashion anymore. So a texture necessarily lives somehow on this finer and the more global configuration that we were referring to as the content or the shape is something that composes out of these fine scale things. And I think like the typical pooling operations that we are using are somehow too simplistic to model the compositionality or the grammar of the visual world. And so I think we need better architectures there, or better layer modules for the pooling operations.
So this compositionality along the scale hierarchy, so I think you mentioned it 2 times, but can you elaborate a bit on this? Because to me, it wasn't exactly clear what you meant by that.
So I think if you think of an object, say, I mean, we have very good generative models of humans, for instance, right? Human pose. These are, you wouldn't compose a human out of pooling over, like it's not a bag of features, right? It's not that the eye could equally be composed with your leg or something, but we have a precise notion of how things connect by its parts and how these parts can be moved and how they're constrained where they cannot move. And then in like more explicit models, like when we build generative models for humans, because we care so much about humans, there we invest all this work to do this. But for general scene compositions, we use operations which basically do a little bag of features, and then we do a little bag of features on top of that again. And so the intermediate layers in deep neural networks have no notion that is tied to the physics of the world, right? And I think that's something from a point of view of generalization, not so much actually from biology. So we also have problems to identify these things in the brain, right? So it's not so clear how things, I mean, it might be, well, I hope it's a measurement problem, because I think it's really fundamental that visual models that acknowledge the compositional nature. Is my connection good enough? Or?
Sometimes there was a small gap, I think, but I think it's okay. Yeah, so it's interesting that Charles was saying that there are these 2 modules in the brain, it seemed. One for shape and one for, well, texture, if I'm paraphrasing a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely modularization, but it's not so much at this precise scale when you want to combine, say, the parts of the human body to a human, that we would know how that is reflected in the neural activities of the brain.
Yeah. If you have any remarks, Charles, please feel free to interrupt.
Yeah, I sorry. There's a bit of feedback, isn't there? I can hear myself somehow. Yeah, I think that's better, actually. I think it's better if we turn off our mics, isn't it, when everyone else is speaking. But yeah, I was just going to follow up on that point. It was very interesting, actually. So there's you mentioned, I was talking about 2 pathways. There may be others, of course, and I was really only referring to the possibility that we have this kind of hybrid kind of functional architecture, perhaps one which is more concentrated on computing local image structure, and another which is specialized to extract some forms of global image properties. And there's one very interesting model in the neurophysiological literature, work from somebody called Moshe Bar, B-A-R, and he has shown, actually, very interestingly, that using techniques like MEG and MRI, that there appear to be these pathways, which one which seems to be primarily processing low spatial frequency information, and is mediated by pathways which go from the primary visual areas, or the extrastriate visual areas, via a part of the brain called the orbitofrontal cortex, and this secondary pathway, which appears to be mediated by the ventral visual system, inferotemporal cortex, which is a slow pathway, but it's primarily involved in processing high spatial frequency information. Now, it may or may not be the case that what he's actually seeing here is something that's equivalent to what we've been talking about, that you have this kind of dual pathway architecture, this fast kind of processing of low spatial frequency information, which gives data about global structure of the visual image, which actually has this interesting recurrence. So this pathway that's mediated by orbitofrontal cortex, the low spatial frequency pathway, appears then to feed back and interact with the processing that's ongoing in the ventral visual pathway. So it's been suggested in some of his work, he suggests that this pathway is used to generate initial predictions about what the observer may be looking at in terms of objects, if it's image classification. It's interesting because it maps onto this idea that as I was saying before, that the functional architecture in the human visual system has evolved this sort of computational solution, which may or may not be of interest. I would like to think it would be of interest in the machine vision world, in your world, because it may give some clue about a computationally efficient way to process visual sensory data in our case. But yeah, they're just an observation, a follow-up observation, because there are clearly parallels between what the previous speaker was talking about and what I was talking about in my talk, and what seems to be the case neurophysiologically as well.
Yeah, and then if I go to the third keynote, so the work of Daniel Kremers, and maybe Nan, please correct me if I'm wrong. So I seem to be the source of the echo, so I will mute myself once I'm done talking. So if I paraphrase what I saw there, is that all large-scale geometry, if you want to do a citywide 3D reconstruction, now we are using deep networks as the front end. Mm-hmm. All the shape processing is still done based on knowledge, based on pure handcrafted. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is very interesting. And also what Daniel said, that yeah, the deep networks, the accuracy isn't yet there. So it's much better to use the geometry that you know of the physical world, and then use neural networks only as a front end. So there's no end-to-end solution there yet. Mm-hmm. And then it may be interesting. So if I now cut through all keynotes, basically maybe you're all saying that CNNs, they solve the task by looking maybe only at local textures. Mm-hmm. If you want to do something with geometry, they can't really do this. And then there was a question in the,
Yes, I mean, I think this is a very nice summary of Daniel's talk. I mean, before going to the topic, I think I would like to thank the organizers and that I'm really honored to have the chance to present my ideas here, and I think it's a very fascinating topic. I think like Jan what summarized is that for now, at least from the topic that I'm doing is about SLAM, simultaneously localization and mapping. Yeah, so or let's say 3D reconstruction. So I think in this topic, end-to-end deep learning is still, let's say, not as strong as pure geometric based method, especially in terms of accuracy. But but there are certain points that we see, at least for current neural network, that we see that can be tackled by deep neural networks. For example, one thing that we did is this molecular depth estimation, meaning that we get the depth map from one single image. I mean, essentially, this is a ill-posed problem, let's say from pure geometric viewpoint. But actually, if we make certain assumptions, for example, if we make the assumptions that, we can train the molecular depth estimation network on one data set, and when we use this network, we assume that the training and testing, they are more or less in the same environment. For example, if the training is in the outdoor scenes for autonomous driving, and the testing is also similar environment, actually we can, with our work, show that it can work quite well. But still, like you said, that in the whole 3D reconstruction or SLAM system, this depth estimation is essentially still used as a prior in front end, but the back end more detailed optimization. Let's say more technically, we're using this Gauss-Newton or some other second order optimization. This is still done by using geometric priors and also traditional optimization based method. But one thing I want to add here is that, towards the topic of this visual inductive priors, is that one thing we use a lot for both for SLAM and deep learning, for our deep neural network, one prior we use a lot is this photometric constancy. I think this is very powerful and also widely used. This assumption is quite simple. Basically means that for the same 3D point in the world, when we project them in different images, they appear the same. At beginning, maybe this doesn't seem to be super real, because during the lighting change or due to occlusions, they can be violated. But actually, with a large amount of data, let's say we collected using camera, we see that using this approach, we can get very high accuracy as well. And this way, actually, I think one thing for 3D deep learning, one very hard thing for 3D deep learning is to collect large amount of 3D annotated data. I think this is not in the same magnitude of effort to collect 2D training data and 2D labels. But with this assumption, that photometric constancy, we can train a lot of 3D learning tasks using only images without using any explicit 3D labels. So for example, we can assume that we know the poses of different images, and we can use multiple view images to train this depth estimation and network or some other 3D estimation network by just using this assumption that a single point in 3D should be having the same color in different images. And our work have already shown that it can deliver quite good results. One simple thing that we can, one very specific example is that, for example, if one wants to train a neural network to predict the depth map from a single image, the most straightforward way to do this is to have, let's say, a LiDAR or some other HPD camera to collect this kind of data. But this is not very scalable, and some devices are quite, let's say, expensive. But one assumption that we can, with this assumption, we can just, let's say, we can let the network predict a depth map, and we assume that we use this prior that if we warp the one image to another image using the pose, known pose, and also the estimated depth, and the synthesized image should have the same color as the real image. So in this way, we can also train the depth, but without using very expensive 3D data.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take some questions from the Q&A. So there are some questions about the texture versus shape, and then particular the texture bias in CNNs. And then there's a question, so is this texture bias, does that come from a CNN, or maybe does it only come from the fully connected layers? And is there a way to weigh potentially the texture and the shape differently? But of course, if the texture bias is inherent in the CNN, maybe we need something different for shape. I don't know, I think Matthias may be the best. I think the question was posed to Matthias, but maybe Charles can also.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment something to it. So I think it's related. I mean, it's really hard to say what a deep neural network is really doing, right? But if we pool all the time, more or less in a linear way over the features before, the pooling operation is basically doing a summary statistics over a local region. And so we do summary statistics of summary statistics across scale. And so that, I think, introduces this texture bias, because it doesn't explicitly encourage the network to learn the local arrangement, or to summarize the local arrangement when going to the next scale. And but I'm a bit worried about, there was also this question whether we can use that by weighting them differently. This again is a linear operation. I don't think that linear operations are really that useful for tackling this problem. Fundamental operation that it needs is segmentation. So it's clear also, if you think of these examples, that a cow is classified by the green grass in the background, which is obviously a non-causal feature. So we use in deep neural networks, we don't really distinguish between the causal features in the image that are really necessary to say that there's a cow in the image, and the things that correlate with it. And so just for this figure ground segregation problem, we already need a way to segment the pixel information that is like those pixels that contain features that are causally related to the classification that there's a cow, and those that are background that may encourage our hypothesis that there's a cow, but that are not sufficient. And that's also what I meant with the compositionality across scale. I think it needs ultimately segmented parts that are then with some notion of how they compose to the next scale, to the bigger shape. Maybe that's
right.
Enough for now. We don't have much time.
And not necessarily a patch of pixels, like.
Exactly. So it needs to be clear which pixels are part of the structure that you integrate over. And otherwise, if you always average over just regions, then you tend to come up with something like textures in the end, I would say. I mean, there are ways like data augmentation, how you can work against this, but
yeah. There's a question to Charles and Matthias about a bit. So in Charles' talk, he talks about, he has one slide about, well, that CNNs are now the best model of the human brain that we have. So Charles doesn't really say much about this, but the question is, yeah, so how much is this true in this, so CNNs do a hierarchy, and now there's a ResNet or a DenseNet that have residual connections. So and how, so what is your personal opinion? Do CNNs really mimic what the brains do? Visual pathways?
Yeah, so I was trying to be a bit provocative when I use that citation. It's not my own. I don't agree with that view, actually. But clearly, CNNs in particular have generated huge amounts of interest in the biological vision world. And I think what I was trying to do in my talk was really to question that view and say, well, look, actually, are CNNs a really plausible architecture for understanding human vision? They have some the kind of, well, the networks I was talking about, and I was perhaps cheating a bit. I was largely restricting my provocative discussion to feed forward hierarchical nets. But clearly, superficially, yes, they have some similarities to what we think we know about the neurophysiology of processing visual sensory data. They have something that is equivalent to sort of receptive fields, increasing abstraction. We don't really know what they're doing, kind of end-to-end deep learning. It's difficult to understand what kinds of representational structure is being computed in intermediate layers, although this is also true of the human brain. But I think, to me, the answer is, the point to me is that, at least in terms of image classification, everything comes down to object geometry. What the human visual system is very good at doing is abstracting and computing or recomputing a representation of 3D object geometry. So, I mean, in a sense, the question I would have as a biological vision person to you guys, to the computer vision community is can CNNs or any deep network in principle do something equivalent to what we think the human system is doing, i.e. Computing and abstracting object geometry from a two-dimensional image. I mean, it's interesting that Nan was talking about extracting depth maps. Of course, you know, the biological system, most of us who have stereo vision, we have stereo visual input, but that stereo visual input is not required for image classification. If I do this and I cut off my stereo vision, I suddenly don't become unable to recognize objects in front of me. So adding stereo depth maps to visual input is a kind of luxury in a sense. It helps constrain the problem of image classification and scene understanding. But in a way, it's a workaround, because the human visual system doesn't need stereo input to classify images. So clearly, the architecture, the processing solution that we have evolved in our brain doesn't need depth input. We need it for reaching and grasping and prehensile movement. It helps us. But yeah, so I just kind of went off topic there. But I guess I would throw the question back and say, you know, can CNNs in principle compute anything that looks like object geometry?
Matthias, do you feel fit to answer that question?
Which question? Sorry.
Yeah,
Charles, could you repeat?
Yeah, the question was whether or not CNNs can compute object geometry, can extract object geometry from an image.
Whether CNNs can do that. So in principle, I mean, I think CNNs can do a lot of most things when you train them in a supervised way and you have this data, right? So I haven't tried it myself. But segmentation works quite well, and so there it's also more related to geometry, right? So I think it is more. I mean, one high-level comment, maybe. I think for this comparison whether machines and brains, how similar they are, depends a lot of what you care about, right? So obviously they are different, and one way how I sometimes point out differences is that the CNN models might be a good model of the ventral stream. It's missing in the picture. The DAW is much more about object-centric representations where you can manipulate objects and so on. And from a cognitive perspective, I think it's very clear that we segment out objects and we build, maybe we have generative models of individual objects, and we can predict what's possible. We could simulate possible futures of them. And this is all not like part of the standard vision machinery that we are using in computer vision. So I mean, it's a lot of active research, but it's not like the plain CNN that we all use. And I think that's what I find very important, also to come up with efficient representations of the world. Obviously, if we have enough computational power to build like a model of the entire surface of the Earth, that's great, right? But it's nothing that would fit into our brains, and it might also be not feasible for an agent-based vision thing, where we might need to have a machine that can, on demand, very efficiently build internal models of the world. I think that's the key question, how the brains are so powerful in building models of the world, doing abstraction, simplify. And I think that has a lot to do with decomposing the world into objects and having good ways of recognizing objects and modeling the dynamics and variations of objects in the world.
So there was another question in the Q&A that is both to Charles and to Matthias, because interestingly, in both your talks, you talk about adversarial adversarial mistakes, and both of you say that CNNs make very different mistakes, and they should so Charles calls this in addition to the Turing test, they should also make similar mistakes as humans do. And the question is, well, is this because of explainability, or is this also because then if the mistakes are the same, then possibly the machinery may be the same?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I mean, I was focusing really on this thing that I described as a Turing test, but is a way of inferring the similarity in the underlying architecture and processing between the biological and machine system. But actually having artificial systems that make errors which are understandable to humans presumably has a number of benefits, although it may be counterintuitive for an engineer to engineer a system that will make errors. But those errors, I think, if we're talking about robotic systems and human interaction with robotic systems, I think clearly there must presumably be some advantage to the system making errors which are explainable, which makes sense to a human observer, or from a kind of social interactive kind of perspective. I suppose I've never really thought about that, but I think it's a very interesting question.
Maybe I can
yes.
Quickly add to it. So I think for me, it's related to the question how can we get closer to the intended solution that we are trying to find, right? So if you try to build a machine that is similar to the brain, obviously if the machine doesn't or fail to reproduce the performance on some categorization task or something, then that's a big difference. And for a long time, we didn't have any machines that got close to even solving these simpler things. And now we have a machine or an approach how we can make machines successful on all kinds of tasks, but we still feel and see that there are lots of differences. And it's a question, what are the most effective ways to making them visible and use these discrepancies to inform us again how to build better inductive priors into the machines such that they become more similar to the brain. And I mean, the most stunning thing to me is like this paradox, how flexible and data efficient machines are at the same time, right? Because that's like almost impossible. Usually when you are flexible, you need lots of data to constrain your solution enough. And somehow it seems like magic that brains are, it seems that they are combining this, and obviously this means that the in some sense apparent, but it just is very much the nature of the world. Again, that's why I'm talking about this a lot. So maybe I stop here. Thanks.
Okay. By this, I think we have reached the end of this this part. So I'd like to thank all keynotes and for attending and for giving a very interesting talk. And I give the floor back to Robert Jan.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you to the Keynote panelists. We'll take a 5-minute break. I would like to ask all the presenters that are presenting a paper after the break to raise their hand in Zoom so that we can find you in the attendees list and make you a panelist. Yeah, so we will see you in 5 minutes.
And of course, Matthias and Charles, you're very welcome to stay, but you're also very welcome to enjoy your vacation.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'll tune back in. It's very interesting. I'll see you shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And also the request for all the presenters to change their name to their full name, so we can find you in the attendees list. Because some of you might have a username that we don't recognize. All right, so we're missing 5 presenters currently. I'm probably going to butcher your name. I'm sorry in advance, but Yuki Hall, Shenwei Tao, Shenfei, Beiji Chen, and Hui Wang. Looking for you still. So if you could please raise your hand in the attendees list or send me a chat message, then I can promote you to panelist. All right, I think we can start. Osman, for your reference, you can find the name of the author that will be answering questions in the workshop in the schedule sheets that we have, so you know who to ask the question to.
Okay.
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Osman. So I'm going to host this session. Can we go to the next slide? So we have 5 interesting papers, and then we will run presentation consecutively. After that, we will have like a question and answering session around 15 minutes. So please put an indicator for each paper, like a P1 or P2, that we can easily find, and we can address this question to authors. And maybe I can read the papers. First one is lightweight action recognition in compressed videos. Second one on sparse connectivity, adversarial robustness, and a novel model of the artificial neuron. Third paper, we'll talk about injecting prior knowledge into image caption generation. Fourth one, learning temporal invariant and localizable features via data augmentation for video recognition. And last one is about unsupervised learning of video representation via dense trajectory clustering. Maybe we can start watching all videos together. Then please put your questions in the Q&A part, and then we will address each question to related authors. Let's begin.
Hello everyone, I'm Yuqi Huo from Renmin University of China. Today I will talk about our paper, Lightweight Action Recognition in Compressed Videos in Visual Priors Workshop, ECCV 2020. This work is done with Xiaoli Xu, Yao Lu, Yulei Niu, Mingyu Ding, Zhiwu Lu, Tao Xiang, and Jiyong Wen. Video analysis has drawn great attention from the computer vision community. However, existing video analysis models have 2 drawbacks. First, videos such as those on social media sites are stored in the compression format, while most existing models work only with uncompressed raw RGB frames. They thus need to decode compressed video first, which leads to extra costs on both pre-processing time and storage. Second, most deep video models are slow and heavy, therefore unsuitable for running on embedded AI devices. Although there are some recent efforts on lightweight video models, these models do not work on compressed videos. In this paper, we tackled a challenging video analysis task called lightweight action recognition in compressed videos. We designed a lightweight yet highly effective DeepCM model for action recognition and extract meaningful representations from compressed videos that contain far less information than raw RGB frames. Specifically, we adopt efficient net as the backbone network to process the multiple modalities extracted from a compressed video, including RGB iframes, motion vectors, and residuals. We then propose a novel aligned temporal trilinear pooling scheme to fuse these modalities. To remedy the weaker motion vectors, we introduce a temporal fusion method to induce the temporal context explicitly. Furthermore, since motion vectors are much coarser than optical flow vectors, we adopt a knowledge distillation strategy via feature alignment. Finally, we overcome a limitation of existing models in that they either ignore B-frames or utilize them incorrectly. By employing correct but more complicated B-frame modeling, our proposed model is applicable to all modern video codecs. This is the overview of our aligned temporal trilinear pooling model. Note that optical flow is only used at the training phase, but not at the testing phase. On the right side is complete design of the trilinear pooling module. We compare the efficiency of the three models, which are CoVer, DMCNet, and our ATTP model, on the Dell R730 platform. Our ATTP model runs faster among three models in both pre-processing time and CN phases. For the efficiency test on the resource-limited device, the experiments are conducted on the NVIDIA Jetson TX2 platform. CoVer and DMCNet are too large to be implementable on this device, while our ATTP framework fits well in the embedded environment and runs very fast. This result shows clearly that our ATTP model outperforms other two models on efficiency and is the only one that is suitable for embedded AV devices. This is the comparison with state-of-art. This shows that among all the compressed video action recognition methods, including CoVer and the DMCNet, our model performs the best among both efficiency and accuracy. As compared to the strongest baseline DMCNet, although our model only achieves marginal improvement on accuracy, this is obtained with much fewer parameters and only 1/10 of the G-flops. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Hello, I am Sergey Bachkanov from LDLib project, and I would like to talk with you about strong neuron and its application to sparse and robust contour recognition. A contour recognition is usually associated with thin colorless lines. Here we propose more general formulation, a logic that deals with structures that can be decomposed into spatially separate parts. Fuzzy logical operations may compose high-level features from low-level ones. Rich contour families can be represented as Cartesian products. We propose to implement fuzzy logical AND with min function, to implement fuzzy logical OR with max function, and to combine them in a composite strong neuron with extremely sparse weights. Here strong is not about tightly packed computational power. Contrary to that, strong neuron is extremely lightweight. Strong is about its highly nonlinear decision surface. Every incoming connection, every non-zero weight, is a one mononlinearity. A contour engine network is composed from three distinct blocks. Strong neurons operate on features, but they can't infer these features from raw pixel values. That's why we have a separate feature detection layer. The next part of network performs sparse and adversarially stable geometric inference. Nevertheless, we may need some limited amount of adversarially unsafe operations. Say we may need to amplify weak signals. Such operations are delegated to the next level, the shallow classifier. The classifier layer is the only adversarially unstable part of the network. Any attack on contour engine is an attack on its last layer. In fact, we reduced the task of training deep and robust classifier to the task of training shallow and robust one. Now, attacks and defenses. First, I want to tell about significance of the proposed artificial neuron. Indeed, one may invent many alternative implementations of and/or logic. However, only one such implementation has perfect adversarial stability. So our strong neurons are more than a trick that accidentally worked. It is the only such trick that may work. And thanks to stability properties of strong neurons, we demonstrated state-of-the-art adversarial robustness at Street View House Numbers dataset. Here, Contour Engine outperformed several completely different and quite sophisticated defenses. Now we move to sparsity. The most popular approach to sparsity is specification of initially dense model, but it has some intrinsic limitations. An alternative way, sparse constructive training, allowed us to achieve unprecedented asymptotic sparsity, a constant number of connections per neuron. As a result, Contour Engine needs 10 times less operations than other sparse networks and 100 times less than dense ones. Finally, one more interesting result. The Contour Engine network spends most of its operations in the unsupervised part. Unsupervised training is known to produce transferable features, so this part may be seen as fixed cost, task-independent preprocessing of the input image. The rest of supervised flops is almost equally distributed between classes. It means that medium complexity contour family, say some traffic sign class, can be separated from the rest of the data set with computational budget less than 10 kiloflop. And it is an exciting result. We all used to think that contour recognition needs depth, that it costs megaflops and gigaflops. This result shows that contour recognition is actually much simpler and easier than we thought. Thank you for your attention.
Hi everyone, I'm Arushi and I will be presenting our work on injecting prior knowledge into image caption generation. This work is jointly done with Basura, Son and Hakan. In the image captioning task, we generate natural language descriptions for a visual scene based on an input image. Current methods for image captioning struggle to reach human-level performance with limited data, as also shown here in this example. We hypothesize that such efficiency in humans is due to their strong prior knowledge. Therefore, we ask this question: how can such prior knowledge be represented and utilized to learn better image captioning models with deep neural networks? An image captioning model, as the one shown here, encodes visual features with a CNN and then generates a caption with the LSTM module. This model fails to model complex associations between the visual and language cues and generates a template-like caption, a man hitting a tennis ball with a racket, ignoring many other objects and relations present in the context of each image, such as tennis court, jumping, etc. To improve generalization and model better correlations between words and image regions, we propose two sources of prior knowledge: an attention module with a LDA topic prior and a sentence prior using a sentence autoencoder regularizer. In image captioning, we generate a word YT at time step t based on the hidden state of the LSTM HT and the visual feature maps of the image V. These feature maps are weighted by attention weights alpha to find relevant image regions. To find these attention weights alpha, we measure the probability for each region conditioned on the previous hidden state and the visual features. This is simply modeled as a neural network with hidden state and visual features as input, and hence it fails to model complex associations between words and image regions. In our conditional latent topic attention, we conditionally marginalize over the latent topics to find salient regions in an image. This helps to find more probable words for the image regions via a latent shared space, that is latent topics. To get a more semantically meaningful latent topic distribution, we first compute the latent topic prior QT using LDA. This QT is then pushed closer to the posterior PL using the KL divergence loss as computed by the two equations here. Next, we discuss our sentence autoencoder regularizer. Learning a lower dimensional mapping via autoencoders acts as a soft constraint on the image captioning model to regularize the syntax and the syntactic nature of the generated captions. It also helps to extract more context information to generate longer and meaningful sentences. This is the final model architecture with our conditional latent topic attention in the captioning model and the SAE regularizer plugged in as an additional arm during image captioning training. The SAE regularizer can be removed during rest time, bringing no additional computations. The final objective function has two cross-entropy losses for the two generated captions and a KL divergence loss between the latent topic posterior and the LDA topic prior. For all our experiments, we use the MS COCO image captioning dataset where each image has 5 captions as shown here. For training the image captioning model with CLTA and SAE regularizer, we take two state-of-the-art models, up-down and AOA-net, and compare the performance of our contribution with the baselines. We comfortably improve over the metrics using up-down as a baseline, especially in Blue 4, CIDR, and SPICE. Similarly, for AOA-net, we show improvements with both cross-entropy loss and CIDR optimization. More details for training results and implementation details can be found in the paper. We also show the effectiveness of our two modules as sources of prior knowledge by training with a subset of the training data. We train on 50 and 75% of the training data and show significant improvements with our methods compared to the baseline models. Here we show some qualitative results by comparing with the ground truth and the baselines. Our models successfully find important relations in the image, such as in the middle of the forest and a dog looking out of the window. We also visualize the latent topic space by generating the top 20 words from the latent topic distribution. As we can see, our model finds relevant topics, which aids the model to look for relevant reasons in an image corresponding to a particular topic and hence generate meaningful words. Hence, we propose two modules for image captioning that exploit prior knowledge. More experiments and ablations are in the full paper. Thanks for listening.
Hello, I will begin my presentation on my workshop paper. The goal of this paper is to regularize the networks for video recognition to train well on the small amount of training dataset from scratch to prevent overfitting. Data augmentation is a general solution to regularize models using a visual inductive prior knowledge. However, operations of data augmentation have to keep estimating labels. In this example, rotating on image changes the class of original data, which is not helpful for training the model. Our first motivation is how to improve temporal invariance for video recognition. Temporal invariance of the model means the ability of predicting consistently under temporally varying perturbations. These two examples indicate geometric and photometric perturbations across video frames. Our second motivation is temporal localization ability of the model. In this example, meaningful action is occurred only in a part of temporal frame. The model should not concentrate on the other meaningless spatiotemporal regions. Here are the questions. From the regularization tricks for image recognition, can we extend them for video recognition? The first key algorithm for data augmentation is random, which exhibits state-of-the-art recognition performance. It augments randomly from the set of augmentation operations. In here, these are 14 image transform operations. Two hyperparameters are searched to produce optimal performance, N and M. For data level mixing for regularization, we select three algorithms. First, mix up blend two images and its corresponding labels, which encourages the model to behave linearly in between training samples. Cutout deletes a region at a random location to encourage the model to focus on various properties of image to avoid relying on the other discriminative regions. Conmix combines the concept of cutout and mix-up. This encourages the model to learn not only what to recognize, but also where to recognize it. Our first extension is random T. It takes an input video. Similar to random, it takes two hyperparameters N and M. From the M, M1 and M2 are calculated, which are the magnitudes for both temporal ends. In this paper, we use these formulas to calculate M1 and M2. From the M1 and M2, magnitudes for each temporal frames are calculated via linear interpolation between the two magnitudes. And these magnitudes are applied to each frame. Here are the examples of random T. Translation, rotation, contrast, and brightness are temporally varying. Next, we extend cutout into frame cutout and cube cutout. Next, we extend comics into frame comics and cube comics. Detailed formulations are described in the paper. Next, we extend comics up. Comics up is proposed as use paper, which prevents sharp transition between boundaries. We extend comics up into frame comics up and cube comics up. The last one is direct extension of mix-up, called fade mix-up. Inspired by dissolve overlap effects in video editing, it can smoothly mix the two videos. We use custom dataset from the workshop and slow-fast network as backbone. Thoroughly applying random augment drastically improves performance. Among them, temporarily expanded random augment T exhibits the best performance. Detailed hyperparameters are described in the paper. Deleting patches, frames, or spatio-temporal cubes reduce the recognition performance in a limited number of training datasets. We do not recommend to use deleting augmentation in these environments. Temporal and spatio-temporal extensions outperforms the spatial-only mixing strategy. Compared to other augments, branding presents the best performance because the number of training data is limited. A linear convex combination of samples easily and effectively augments the sample space. For the challenge validation set, using both random augment T and temporal mixing shows the best performance. For the final challenge, we use same method with additional ensemble. Compared to other challenge entries, we do not use multiple backbones and two-stream structures. Nevertheless, our simple method produces comparative results. We visualize spatial-temporal class activation maps. For the model trained on mix-up, it cannot localize well spatio-temporally. In contrast, the model trained on fade mix-up can localize spatio-temporally well. The reasons why the improvements are marginal is threefold. First one is the lack of data and lack of temporal perturbation, and no room is left to learn the ability to localize temporally in trimmed videos. So our future work is the extension to large-scale dataset and untrimmed dataset. Thank you for listening.
Hello, I'm Pavel, and in this talk I'm going to present to you our work on unsupervised learning of video representations by dense structure clustering. I will begin by briefly reviewing some of the most popular unsupervised objective functions of the literature, starting with the image-based ones. In early work, some researchers have attempted to design surrogate tasks, which could be supervised automatically, such as predicting the relative location of image patches, or the rotation degree of the image. In the video domain, these objectives have been adopted directly, but the performance remained low. In the last 2 years, however, a new generation of unsupervised image-based objectives has almost entirely bridged the gap to fully supervised training. Instead of manually designing objective functions, these methods use the classical cross entropy loss and simply treat each image as an individual class. Another type of methods takes this approach one step further, attempting to automatically group the images into clusters and use these clusters as pseudo-labels to train the network. In this work, we first attempt to adapt the instant recognition and local aggregation objectives to the video domain, and then analyze the resulting representations and propose improvements which utilize depth trajectories to better capture the motion information in videos. The objective part is actually really simple. Since this objective is so generic, all we need to do is replace the input images with videos and the two-dimensional CNNs with their three-dimensional counterparts. Both for instant recognition and for local aggregation, the actual objective function remains the same. Let's now analyze how effective these functions are. For these experiments, we train a 3D ConvNet on the large-scale kinetics dataset with our unsupervised objectives. To analyze the quality of the result representations, we follow the protocols from prior work and fine-tune the networks on UCF 101 and HMB51 dataset fraction recognition in a supervised way. Notice that these datasets are much smaller than kinetics and cannot be used to learn deep representations directly. To illustrate this point, we compare the model trained on the dataset from scratch with a model that was pre-trained on kinetics in a supervised way. As we can see, the Scratch model indeed performs much worse, especially on the smaller scale HMB dataset. Our instant recognition approach, however, manages to bridge a large part of this gap without using any labeled videos. And the more sophisticated local aggregation objective leads to further improvements. However, the gap between the performance of the video local aggregation objective and its fully supervised counterpart remains large. To investigate the reason for this phenomenon, we now qualitatively analyze the cluster discovered during training. We can see that one cluster contains videos shot in the pool, another captures various scenes in the nature, the third one focuses on vehicles, and the last one contains events happening in the backyard. What is common between these clusters is that they seem to group videos based on background appearance, ignoring the actual activities happening in them, which is of course detrimental for the downstream task of action recognition. It seems that clustering videos based on appearance is an undesirable shortcut that the objective manages to exploit, and we need to find a way to bias it towards focusing on video dynamics. To this end, we turn to the pre-deep learning video representations. These representations, called dense trajectories, were designed precisely to encode the behavior of actors in high dynamic scenes. In particular, they first densely tracked interest points in the videos, and then aggregated classical appearance in motion-based descriptors along each trajectory. This approach was later improved to focus on the actors and filter out the background. In this work, we use the improved dense trajectories as a prior and local aggregation objective. In particular, instead of clustering the videos in the feature space of the network, we compute the dense trajectory descriptors for each video in the dataset, and then cluster these videos in the corresponding feature space, which is biased towards humans' dynamics, not background scene appearance. We then use the same non-parametric objective to train the network to respect these new clusters. Finally, we further fine-tune the model on its own feature space for a few epochs to refine the representations. When transferring the resulting model to action classification datasets, we observe a significant improvement over the vanilla local aggregation approach, which is especially pronounced on the more challenging HMPP dataset. Well, qualitative analysis of the discovered clusters shows that they indeed focus on motion patterns, such as forward-backward hand motion, body flipping, very fast motion, and riding. And these clusters also are clearly invariant to the background appearance. Finally, we compare our approach to the state of the art. For a fair comparison, we take such factors as network architecture and the number of frames used in training into account. When compared to previous work which used the same backbone as our method, our approach shows strong results, which are especially pronounced on the more challenging HMPP dataset, where the improvements over the previous state of the art are as large as 7%. A very recent CBT approach reports even higher accuracy, but uses a much deeper and more sophisticated S3D architecture. To compare to it more fairly, we report results as a fraction of the fully supervised performance of the same architecture achieved by each objective, whenever this information is available. As can be seen from these results, when normalized for architecture differences, our objective outperforms all the prior work, including CBT, by a large margin. Thanks for listening, and please check our paper for more ablation analysis of the approach.
Yes, we watch all these papers, all the presentations. Do you have any questions? I didn't see any questions written in the question and answering session. Please write your questions there. And I'm looking for authors of first paper if they are here. We don't have them. So maybe I can wait a couple of minutes if you have questions to other papers. And maybe we can wait if they will join. I'm not sure if they will join. I had questions to first paper, but yeah, maybe I can skip those questions because no one will answer.
Yes, I think we can get started with, I think we had some questions of our own, at least for papers 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
We were notified that authors for paper 5 couldn't make it to this session.
Okay.
So they will be there tonight. So if people are interested in asking questions about paper 5, they can join tonight.
Great. Great. Then I have a question to Sergey, like 2 questions actually. Maybe Sergey, you can open your camera and you can unmute yourself. Yeah, welcome.
Hi.
Yeah, I will ask the first question. The training strategy is not allowing to use mini batches. It seems like a major drawback for training on large scale or high resolution data sets. So is it possible actually to train with like big batch sizes and with large data sets?
I hope that it is possible, but yes, it is an important question. As for now, I am limited by small-scale datasets, something less than 1 million of images. Maybe 500 of thousands of images. I hope that it's possible, but as for now, I don't know how to do it efficiently. Maybe a multi-step procedure that will propose several candidates neurons computed using mini batches, and then we'll evaluate them on a full data set. I think that something like that can be done, but it's need experimentation and time.
Yeah, maybe as a future work.
And you talked about the next question.
Yeah, next question is from my colleague Robert Jan. So many heuristics are needed to optimize the strong neuron. What are the difficulties of training this strong neuron that you define in your paper?
First, strong neuron is really difficult to train using a gradient descent. It is extremely nonlinear, and mean function makes it non-convex. The max function is not a problem, as we already know. We already trained networks with max inside, but mean makes it extremely non-convex. In my paper, I changed the problem formulation from gradient-based optimization to discrete optimization, and it's completely different approach. With discrete optimization, you may use some tricks, you may use some tricks, some heuristics that will allow you to find good solutions. Maybe not perfect solutions, but good ones. And discrete optimization is not so prone to non-convexity. There is no notion of non-convexity in discrete tasks, and no false extrema.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the problems with gradient descent is that mean function actually has many false extrema, many local extrema, and optimization stalled in this extrema. With discrete optimization, we have no such problem. If you have a good heuristics, it will work.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your questions. Any other questions? I didn't see any question and answering, but from other panelists, if they have any other questions, then they can ask. If not, I will thank you, Sergey. Then I will ask a question about the third paper. I think Arushi is here.
Hi, Osman. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think my internet connection is a bit unstable. Yeah. Okay. That's great. I won't be able to start my video as my internet connection doesn't work so well.
That is okay. That is okay. So I have a question about your sentence autoencoder regularizer. So you said that it gives better context learning, and we can learn the context and we can use the context better. Can you elaborate with it? How it is working, how it is helping us to learn?
Right. So the sentence autoencoder is learned offline first with the whole caption data to just reconstruct the captions. So so what we do is we learn like a denoising autoencoder where the input to the model is where we drop some random words from the caption and then reconstruct the full caption. So now this whole autoencoder is basically learned to reconstruct from noisy data if the hidden state has noisy representations. So if we plug this autoencoder as additional regularizer to the original captioning training, so what it helps to do is learn better hidden representations of the LSTM while training, because it forces the model now to learn to generate better sentences or reconstruct better sentences using a better hidden state representation, which couldn't be done so properly from the original image captioning task. So adding this, it sorts of act as a regularizer in the sense that now we can see that we can generate much longer sentences from the captioning model if we plug this as a regularizer, which I think is what I mean by context as well. Is it is able to capture a better hidden state representation of the model.
Okay, then probably it is getting more objects or things around the main object there, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I understand about the context. Maybe like, okay, tennis court, but yeah, you see the racket or you see tennis ball or other people. But that was the thing I understand as a context. But okay, yeah, I understand.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions from other panelists? If not, I will thank you, Arushi. Then I will move to paper 4.
Thanks a lot.
welcome. I don't know who is here from paper 4. Can you unmute yourself?
It should be Tarakin.
Yeah, thank you. And I have questions. Yeah, you were talking about maybe it was as a feature work. So you said that you will try untrimmed method or untrimmed data set. So did you have any chance to try, or how you are thinking to try your data augmentation is on untrimmed setup? Can you give a bit some information or how it can be done?
Yeah, as mentioned in the paper, some of our extensions can localize temporarily. So in untrimmed videos, so we can localize temporal frames, temporal action frames, which provides action localization area. So our next plan is to apply our extension to that kinds of tasks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I have another question. So like also during our keynote talk, we were talking about data augmentation. I think Jan asked Matthias about, you know, is it a good way to go with just the data augmentation because we are just applying this in the input feature? What do you think about that? Because your paper is mostly having like also for like data augmentation for also temporal, learning temporal information in the video. So what do you think about that? So should we have still keep on the data augmentation, or should we have like more smart network architectures or smart tricks to make it work not only from the input? Because if we have also less data, then okay, data augmentation is already helping there. But what do you think about that? What should we do?
Yeah, I strongly agree. Data augmentation will be key techniques to improve some basic performances. Not only a limited data set, but also if we have a lot of data set. So I think keep focusing on the data augmentation, especially in video, is not explored well. So yeah, in studying data augmentation in each domain knowledge is, I think, this is very important. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we will not have authors of the last paper, but I think they will join in the second broadcast. So maybe we can ask the questions to them now. I'm giving the stage to my friends. He will talk about the challenge winners.
Yeah, thank you very much, Osman. So now we're going to present our challenges. So for this workshop, we've proposed 4 challenges. You have in the screen the 4 of them. They are from 4 typical tasks in the computer vision. So we have image classification, object detection, semantic segmentation, and action recognition. They have a common objective, which is to have more efficient systems. So for the first challenge, we reduce the ImageNet dataset, and the metric is the top 1 accuracy, and these are the winners. They are from Alibaba Group, and we're going to present their work.
Hello everyone, I'm Sun Pengfei from Alibaba Turing Lab. For data efficient image classification, we present a Visual Priors framework which can learn better from only 50 images per class. And the framework achieves the first place on the Visual Inductive Priors classification track. Hello everyone, I'm Sun Pengfei from Alibaba Turing Lab. For data efficient in the framework, we proposed a novel 3-branched architecture called Dual Selective Kernel Network, which is based on ResNext. For discriminative feature extraction, we replaced the convolution of kernel size 3 with the selective kernel convolution module. For a better ability of translation invariant, we use blur pooling. We apply 3-branch architecture in residual block for regularization. We propose a positive class loss function. For compactness of intra-class, we use center loss, inspired by neural-backed decision trees. A hierarchical architecture is defined according to the semantic relationships. Tree supervision loss is used for model training. The figure shows an overview of methods and appearances.
Marcos, are you there?
Sorry, my mic was mute. So for this challenge, we reduced the COCO dataset for object detection, and we used the AP metric. And the participants.
Right.
So the winners are from Hyokao University and Wuhan University. Sorry for my pronunciation, and we're going to see their work.
Hello everyone, thanks for watching this video. I'm going to report our method of object detection challenge. Firstly, to the nature of date, we proposed a back of offline and online declamation. On the offline part, we copy a single picture 6 times with random transformation and use bounding box accommodation to random crop cases with few samples. Then we use the ablation library to the above all date. On the online part, we use bounding box schedule, grid mask, and mix up. On the training time, we use 3 backbone networks with cascade RCN and invert global context features. Then we use switchable truth convolution to backbone and replace all batch nomination with scope nomination. Besides, use multi-scale training and testing. We refer to a new model optimization method, namely gradient generation. Finally, we propose using the weighted box precision method. We win the first place in this challenge. If you have any question, welcome to contact me. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So now the semantic segmentation challenge. For this challenge, we used the cityscapes dataset, a reduced training set. And for the metric, we used the IOU. So now we're going to, the winners. The winners are from Alibaba Group. And now we're going to see their work.
Multi-level appeals of combination scalation for long-tailed sense parsing. First, create a pure operator in the user baseline model to get a new tail bucket. Our model is an encode-decode structure. We use HNet as the encode model in the user cascade BLPN and the master heads as the core model. Our master head compile hierarchical multi-scale attention module. We organization the final 90 class to middle class by merging the single class. For example, person in the reader belong to human. The middle must head outputs the middle results and the final must head outputs the final results. Our must head combined with segmentation head and attention head. Attention head is the same as the segmentation head, but the last conversion D is 1. When training, we use the original scale and the downsumming inter. When inference, we use the original scale and the downsumming and the upsumming inter. We use the Y loss and the C loss or final loss. We also use the long tail pairs of multi-level cameras. It's our cameras results. It's our single model results. It's our scale attention improves some class I will use such a word. We use a string photo cross validation the multi-model in Silver. It's our final results. Thank you.
And for the action recognition challenge, we used for this challenge a reduced training set from the UCF 101. And for the metric, we proposed the top 1 accuracy. And the winners of this challenge are from University of Central Florida. And now we're going to check their video.
Hi, I'm Ishan. Here I'm presenting Kalis, our winning submission to VI Prior Action Recognition Challenge. This work was done with Kelly Carter and Dr. Mubarak Shah. For the challenge, the dataset used was canonical version of UCF 101, which has around 13,000 videos. So for UCF 101, state of the art is 98%, but it's using pre-trained weights from huge datasets like Kinetics, ImageNet, or Sports 1 Million. So for this competition, no pre-trained weights were allowed. Here is a schematic of our approach. We use a two-stream approach using RGB and optical flow streams. We also use multiple spatiotemporal resolution in both training and validation in order to learn and validate on long and short temporal structure of an activity at different spatial scales. This table shows comparison for two optical flow models trained in different way. This first model is trained with 64 consecutive frames, which is in literature. We also trained with 16 frames with different temporal range. Second model requires significant less amount of memory, as well as it achieves competitive performance. So in the conclusion, while training from scratch from small dataset, optical flow significantly outperforms RGB stream. And multi-validation strategy, it helps in boosting the performance, as well as it helps in reducing the training computational requirements. So if you have any questions, just ask me on this email. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. And thank you very much for all the participants for the challenges. And now we're going to continue with the poster session. So I'm going to give the word to my colleague Attila.
Yes, thank you very much, Marcos. So next up is the poster track of our paper submissions. We have received lots of submissions. We have selected 6 papers to be accepted, and also an additional paper that was also a challenge participant. So first we're going to watch the videos, and after that will be a joint Q&A session for both the poster track and the challenge submissions. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A chat box. And after the Q&A session, we will watch the videos for the external paper track submission. But first, the poster track videos.
Today I'm going to introduce our work on distilling visual priors from self-supervised learning. This work is done by Bingchen Zhao and Xin Wen. In this work, we focus on the problem setting where no pre-trained checkpoint is allowed, and the amount of training data is limited to 50 images per class. The challenges we face with limited data is twofold. First, the CNN model can easily overfit to the label information by simply memorize the dataset. Second, limited data will cause the model to learn a poor representation for classification. As shown in the table, supervised learning of a CNN model on the challenge dataset only has 27.8 accuracy on the validation set. Our solution to this problem utilizes self-supervised learning, as we show that self-supervised learning is not biased to human label and can learn a diverse representation from the data. State-of-the-art self-supervised contrastive learning method takes each image in its augmented version as a class, termed instance discrimination in the literature. Thus, no human label is required in the training process, therefore the risk of overfitting to the labels is prevented. The other advantages of self-supervised learning is that self-supervised learning can learn diverse representation from data by different augmentations, as shown in SimCLR. The self-supervised learning only provides a representation. For downstream classification tasks, we will need to learn a classifier on top of the representation. The most common method is linear readout, which is to learn a MLP using the representation while the encoder is frozen. This linear readout outperforms supervised learning, but there's still room to improve. We can also use the self-supervised checkpoint as an initial weight and fine-tune. This method still faces the risk of overfitting. Our proposed method presents a two-phase pipeline. The first phase is to use self-supervised learning to learn a good representation. The second phase is to perform a self-distillation during the fine-tune process. The distillation can be seen as a regulation term. Experiments show our method outperforms the baseline by 16.7 in validation accuracy. By deploying other tricks, we rank second in the classification challenge by ensemble only 2 models. Our code is open sourced on GitHub. Thanks for your time.
In this paper, we propose a simple yet effective unsupervised image classification framework for representation learning, which simplifies deep cluster by discarding embedding clustering. Deep cluster is an unsupervised representation learning method, which generates pseudo-labels by embedding clustering and drives an end-to-end representation learning. However, there are 2 drawbacks in deep cluster. The first one, it needs to save the global latency embedding of the entire dataset for clustering, which limits it to scale to the large-scale datasets. The second one, it needs an actual forward pass of the entire dataset for pseudo-label generation in each epoch, which leads to low training efficiency. In this work, we make it into a unified framework of image classification. where the processes of pseudo-label generation and representation learning are exactly consistent with the inference phase and training phase of image classification. For efficiency, the pseudo-label in current epoch can reuse the forward results from the previous epoch, which makes it twice faster than deep cluster. Here is our performance compared with deep cluster and other self-supervised learning methods. Our method surpasses deep cluster and most of other methods. More details can be referred to our paper. Thank you.
Hello everyone, it is a great pleasure to introduce our work TDMPNet here. Occlusion is an important problem in object recognition. Deep convolutional neural networks suffer from a severe performance drop and occlusions that do not appear in the training data. In the real world, occlusions are highly variable in terms of appearance and shape, so training data is always limited with respect to all possible occlusion conditions. In this work, we introduce several inductive priors to improve robustness to occlusion with limited occlusion data. They are prototyped with spatial structure, partial prototype matching, and top-down modulation. Specifically, we apply prototype learning to the feature tensors extracted by DCNNs to maintain the spatial structure and enable the following partial matching. Then a feature dictionary obtained by clustering feature vectors at different positions, which has been shown to be able to represent object parts, is applied to produce a visibility map showing important object positions, which enables partial prototype matching. Further, inspired by the important role of top-down connection in neuroscience, a top-down modulation based on this visibility map is introduced to reduce the contamination of surrounding occluders during feature extraction. Experiments demonstrate the effect of each part in the different datasets and different occlusion conditions, including both synthetic and real-world occlusion. Details please refer to the paper. Thanks for watching this video.
Hi, my name is Ray, and this is from Facebook AI. In this paper, we studied generalization of object proposals. We define generalization as the ability to localize unseen classes. Our contributions are twofold. We provide analysis on both dataset properties and modeling choices that are critical for training generalized detectors. We propose the idea of prototypical classes as a subset of classes that are sufficient and necessary for localizing unseen classes. We quantitatively show that visual diversity is crucial for this purpose, and the trade-off between fine-grained and coarse-grained label space. We also provide modeling insights for training generalized detectors, such as two-stage versus one-stage detectors, class-specific versus class-agnostic bounding box regression. To sum up, this paper provides analysis towards scaling up detection to a large amount of classes in a more data-efficient way. Thanks for your attention.
I am Tương Do from AIOG company, and today I want to introduce our paper, Multiple Interaction Learning with Question Type Prior Knowledge from Constraining Answer Space in Visual Questions Answering. As we know that the task of visual questions answering is to provide a correct answer to a given question such that the answer is consistent with the visual content of a given image. There are three main components in here. We have feature extraction, attention model, and the classification. We also introduce our investigation. Look at the figure 2. We have found out that the question type have a great correlation with answer in VQA. To deal with this investigation, we introduce our proposed model, which is called NewKitty for short. The model contains two main modules. The first one is the question type prior extraction and integration module, and the second one is the multiple integration module. Through the introduced model, we have done an extensive experiments, and we saw that our model yield good performance with the most competitive approach in different benchmarking datasets. Thank you for listening.
Hello everyone, our topic of presentation is a self-supervised framework for human instance segmentation. In this work, we aim to deal with the limitations and challenges in existing models for human instance segmentation. The major challenge is the lack of training data. And so we have to use prior knowledge to deal with the challenges. Here is an example. In the top row, there are 5 frames, and in the middle frame, the person marked in yellow bounding box is occluded by 2 other people. If we do not use the prior knowledge that the human motions should be consistent across video frames, we cannot detect him, as shown in the bottom row. But if we do leverage the prior knowledge, we can infer his location by leveraging his locations in 2 adjacent frames. Here is our proposed framework. It is composed of 1 TPR module and 1 GPSR module. And we can see that our proposed approach achieves significant improvements over existing methods. Thank you for listening to our presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. So are there any questions from the audience? I believe there are no questions asked so far. So I have some questions of my own. Let's start with that. Yeah, so let's start with the first paper. I don't know if who from the authors is present to answer the questions. Yes, so my question is, in your work you introduce a new margin loss where you define a certain margin hyperparameter. So I was wondering how sensitive your training strategy is to the setting of that hyperparameter.
The margin hyperparameter, we didn't actually do those experiments of margin parameters. So actually, it's not that sensitive. We tried the value of 0.4, 0.6, and 0.5. The result doesn't. It's not that sensitive.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Could you maybe elaborate a bit more on what that margin loss exactly does?
The margin loss is actually from the facial recognition community. The margin loss actually improves the feature discriminant. It separates the positive examples from those negative examples. And in this challenge, the negative example, the number of negative example is limited. It only has like 50,000 images in this challenge data set. So the limited number of negative examples will make the model less discriminative. So the margin loss, the margin parameter actually helps to separate those positive examples from those negative examples, and this will help the model to be more discriminative.
I see. Okay, thanks very much for your answer. Yes, moving on to the next paper. So in paper 2, you show that it's pretty, you can pretty easily or like more easily do clustering with deep neural networks rather than doing it in a latent space. You can simply use pseudo labels. So I was wondering, have you thought about? I'm trying to unmute you. So I was basically wondering, is that method also applicable to other tasks other than classification? So for example, semantic segmentation or action recognition. Is there any, do you have any thoughts on that?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you,
yeah.
Can you repeat your questions? Something wrong with my
I use phone to connect room, so I
of
can
course.
hear your can you repeat your questions?
Yes, of course. So the question basically is, you performed the clustering for the task of classification, and have you considered using the same method for example, semantic segmentation?
Yes, yes. Yes, the difference between image used to segmentation is to how to ensure the organization invariance. So because we use different organization to generate pseudo labels for clustering. So if we find a better way to ensure how to keep auto augmentation invariance in segmentation to semantic segmentation, so we can also use it to this semantic segmentation. Also, I think the way for learning deep representation learning is how to keep the feature diversity while ensure the augmentation invariance. So no matter contrastive learning and deep clustering theories method, they all keep feature diversity and ensure augmentation invariance. That's it.
Right. Thank you very much. So maybe somewhat related to your answer, how do you make sure that the network does not converge to some arbitrary solution where everything is classified as the same class? How do you make sure that there is enough diversity?
In deep clustering theories method, because we have predefined a fixed class number, so we have to avoid empty class. This is the one method, and also during training we make a balance sampling. So we work for assign all image to each classes. So if you see our paper, you can find the image sample assignment is nearly uniform distribution. So so this we can this is the way we keep the feature diversity. So in constructive learning though, in constructive learning method, their way to keep feature diversity is how to select negative sample.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. I think given the time, we should move on to the external paper submissions.
We should.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Attila. Finally, at the end of the session, we will play through 3 pre-recorded talks for external works. Yes, so let's do that.
Hello, my name is Nazan Rahnavard, and this presentation is about our recent work on introducing a fast and accurate algorithm for selecting best representatives of a large dataset with many applications in deep learning. So given a data set, our aim is to select only k data points whose linear combinations best approximate the whole data set. For that, the subspace of the selected data point should be closest one to the subspace spanned by the first k spectral component. This problem can also be cast as a column subset selection problem, which is NP-hard. We have introduced an algorithm which is called a spectrum pursuit, which is an iterative, fast, and accurate algorithm. And the idea is that given a subset S, we first find the complement of S, we add it to the subset, and then remove another sample. And we keep doing this iteratively until convergence. We have shown that SP outperforms other state-of-the-art algorithms in a wide range of applications, such as training again on reduced data, graph-based selection, feature learning, and open set identification. Please visit our webpage for more information. And thank you for your attention.
Hello everyone, my name is Adam Kotelewski and I'm presenting Compositional Convolutional Neural Networks, a deep architecture with innate robustness to partial occlusion. In our experiments, we show that standard deep networks are not robust to partial occlusion because the large variability of occluders introduces a distribution gap. In contrast, our compositional nets can robustly classify out-of-distribution data that is caused by partial occlusion. The key idea of our model is that we replace the standard classification head of deep networks with a differentiable generative model of the neural feature activations. The generative model explicitly represents a feature tensor F as a spatial composition of individual feature vectors, Fp. Partial occlusion induces unexpected activation patterns in the feature vectors that can be accurately localized and discarded with an outlier model. Our experiments show that compositional nets are a lot more robust to partial occlusion compared to standard deep networks.
I'm Osman. To work with Jan van Hemert, convolutional layers can exploit absolute spatial location. Convolution is a strong visual inductive prior. It gives same response irrespective of location. Is it always true? In this paper, we show when it is not true. Can full convolutional network predict the location of a patch? In this setup, yes, with perfect accuracy. The experiment shows that convolutional layers are not translation equivariant. How can convolution encode location? We have same input and 3 different types of convolution here. After convolution, we obtain these feature maps. When we change the pixel location and apply same filter, then for valid and same convolution, information is lost. However, full convolution preserves translation equivariance. Recovering equivariance improves the data efficiency. X-axis shows the amount of training data, and full convolution shows larger improvement for smaller datasets.
All right. That's it for the external posters. We've come to the end of the session. We will keep the meeting online for a while, so that those who are interested can stick around and have some more informal discussions. Maybe there's more questions for the external posters or for the challenge winners. Yeah, you're welcome to stick around. You can ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A function, and we can have maybe a bit more discussion. But if you don't, thank you very much for attending. I think we've had some very fruitful discussions. We hope to see you again next year at the second Visual Inductive Priors for Data Efficient Deep Learning workshop. So thank you very much.